world flooded with curated lives and relentless performance metrics, comparison has become one of the most pervasive and poisonous habits of the modern mind. We compare our appearance, our careers, our intelligence, our happiness, even our grief, against the polished, filtered fragments of others. And yet, over a century ago, Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, offered a radically different lens through which to view personal growth. He wrote, "The only person with whom you have to compare yourself is you in the past." At first glance, this may seem like a simple piece of self-help advice. But buried beneath it is a profound psychological insight into the nature of identity, self-worth, and the path to true transformation. Freud was not known for optimism or easy comforts. He studied the shadow side of the human psyche, repressions, neuroses, unconscious drives. He believed that much of what motivates us lies hidden beneath the surface, shaped by childhood experience, social expectations, and deep internal conflicts. So when Freud advises us to compare ourselves only with our past selves, he is not offering a cheerful slogan. He is pointing toward a fundamental truth. Self-knowledge is the beginning of freedom, and progress is not measured by others' standards, but by your own inward evolution. To understand why this matters, we need to look at the psychological harm that external comparison causes. From an early age, we are conditioned to evaluate ourselves against others. In school, through grades and competitions; in social life, through popularity and appearance; and in adulthood through wealth, success, or status. Social media has only amplified this, offering a never-ending reel of people who seem more attractive, more accomplished, more fulfilled than we are. This constant exposure triggers feelings of inadequacy, jealousy, and unworthiness. Our sense of self becomes contingent, tethered to the lives of others, most of whom we barely know. And yet we act as if these comparisons are valid measures of who we are. But Freud would challenge this narrative. For him, the true psychological struggle is not to be better than others, but to integrate the many parts of oneself into a coherent and honest identity. This is not an easy task. The self is not a singular entity. It is a complex interplay between conscious desire, unconscious drives, past traumas, inner defenses, and social masks. True development, then, can only be judged by comparing who you are now with who you were, in insight, in balance, in authenticity. Let us consider what this kind of self-comparison requires. First, it demands memory, not just of facts but of feeling. You must be able to recall what you once feared, what you once avoided, what once caused you pain or confusion. You must be willing to trace the arc of your reactions, your growth, your patterns. This is not easy. Freud emphasized that the human mind is adept at forgetting what is painful or uncomfortable. Defense mechanisms like repression, denial, or projection protect us from what we are not yet ready to face. But when we dare to look back honestly, we begin to see our trajectory, how we have changed, not always in ways that are visible to others, but in ways that matter. For example, perhaps you once struggled with self-doubt so deep that you couldn't speak your mind. And today, though fear may still flicker, you are able to voice your thoughts. That shift, however subtle, is immense. Or perhaps you once defined yourself through relationships, constantly seeking validation. And now you begin to find a sense of worth that is not dependent on another's approval. This too is growth. These internal milestones are not broadcasted. They don't win applause. But they mark real transformation, the kind that Freud believed essential to psychic health. When we compare ourselves to others, we erase context. We do not know their traumas, their histories, their inner battles. But when we compare ourselves to our own past, we restore complexity. We see how far we've come or where we've stalled. We hold ourselves accountable not to external standards, but to our own truth. And perhaps most importantly, we allow compassion to enter the equation. Because sometimes, looking back means confronting versions of ourselves we'd rather forget: the insecure teenager, the angry partner, the avoidant friend, the self-sabotaging professional. Freud would argue that these parts are not enemies. They are fragments of our psychic life that need understanding, not shame. In comparing ourselves to the past, we do not only measure progress, we offer forgiveness. We see that even our worst moments were attempts at coping, at surviving. And in that recognition, we reclaim those parts of ourselves and bring them into wholeness. But there is a danger in this inward comparison as well. Some may use it as a new form of self-criticism. I was more focused 5 years ago. I used to be happier. I've become worse. Freud would not deny that regression is real. The psyche can fall into loops, can repeat unresolved conflicts, can cling to the familiar even when it harms. But the purpose of self-comparison is not judgment, it is awareness. If you see that you've regressed, the question is not, "What's wrong with me?" but rather, "What is unresolved within me? What need is unmet? What fear has returned? What old story am I still telling myself?" This is the heart of psychoanalytic work: to trace the thread of the present back to the hidden roots in the past, and then to untangle it with care. Freud's insight invites us into a more personal and more truthful form of growth. It tells us your journey is not linear. You will rise and fall. You will repeat patterns. You will contradict yourself. You will take 1 step forward and 2 steps back. But you are allowed to change. You are allowed to improve slowly. You are allowed to fail and begin again. Progress is not a public performance, it is a private becoming. And this shift in perspective leads to an entirely different kind of self-esteem, one that is not inflated by comparison, but rooted in continuity. When your worth is no longer tied to being better than someone else, you free yourself from the emotional roller coaster of validation. You begin to define success as self-honesty, not self-promotion. You measure growth not by trophies or titles, but by how much closer you are to your own truth. This kind of growth is quiet. It happens in therapy rooms, in journal pages, in conversations with oneself. It unfolds not in front of a crowd, but in the intimate mirror of your own reflection. And it is precisely this internal progress that Freud believed to be the foundation of mental health. Ironically, by refusing to compare yourself to others, you often end up more stable, more confident, and more grounded. Because you are no longer swinging between ego and inadequacy. You are anchored in your own path. You know where you've been. You know where you faltered. And you know where you rose. And so the invitation is this: the next time you feel the creeping envy of someone else's success, or the anxious need to catch up, pause. Ask yourself, where was I last year? 5 years ago? What have I healed? What am I still carrying? What do I understand now that I didn't before? These questions are not soft, they are fierce acts of reclamation. They return the focus to the only story you can truly live, your own. In the end, Freud's quote is not just advice, it's a philosophy of selfhood. The only comparison that matters is with the person you used to be. Because that is where growth lives. That is where insight is born. And that is where, slowly, you begin to become the person your soul has always known you could be.